The 19th chapter. Another like you had come looking for God once. He strode across the plains in a single pace. He ate the mountains on the horizon. Villager of Fiaba. Deicide was sitting on a fountain outside the female risk-eater complex. He was waiting for Rodella, while he and the Abyss shared a large plate lunch. He was surrounded by a few members of his entourage, and a few civilians making cross-conversation with Deicide in between. Every now and then he would mumble something with a mouthful of rice and steak. But he was not particularly interested. He was more worried with what Rodella had to tell him. She had started her billet as a risk-eater security specialist in the districts, and he could tell she was disappointed with the work. Not only would an officer have to accustom themselves with the outlandish violence, but the pointless political struggles between the delegates and city officials. He was also sure she would have questions concerning Fawn's whereabouts. The two women had spent considerable time together, and Deicide felt he could hardly blame Rodella for bonding with her. "Hey, baby sis, what happened to that girl you was dating?" Ash said. Baby sister scrunched her brow. "Which one?" she said. The silver-headed one. Infantry," Ash said. Baby sister said. Ash sucked in a short breath. "The one with the teeth going everywhere," Ash said. Yeah, I had to let her go. It was like making out with a bag of broken glass," Baby sister said. "Hey, nobody ever complains about your mouth? Grandpops?" Deicide snapped out of his trance. "Huh? What?" Deicide said. "Your old ladies don't nag you about your fangs?" Baby sister said. "Well, all of mine are straight," Deicide said, allowing the Abyss to pick meat from between his teeth. "You know they can fix that shit, right?" Ash said. "Yeah, if you're a civilian. Otherwise they pull them out and start all over. Shit takes like 2 years. I can't be dating some chick with no teeth," Baby sister said. Ash glanced at Deicide quickly. Lady Knot didn't have any teeth. "No disrespect, Grandpops," Ash said. Deicide waved a hand lazily. "It's fine," Deicide said. Baby sister bumped Deicide and pointed up to the tier that held Rodella's apartment. Deicide felt self-conscious when he saw she was wearing a flowery blouse and skirt. He was wearing one of his working uniforms. Deicide tried to think if he even had anything in his wardrobe that was not a uniform, a suit, or exercise gear. As he stood, the Abyss snatched away the empty plate from him and absorbed it into her folds, picking away the errant grains of rice surrounding his mouth with her tendrils. Deicide walked over to meet her, trying to wave away his entourage. "What's the deal?" Baby sister said. Ash immediately took the hint and strolled off. "We have some matters to discuss," Deicide said. Baby sister stood as tall as her tiny frame would allow her. "I am an excellent conversationalist," Baby sister said. "That's a lot of syllables for you," Deicide said, rustling her hair. "Motherfucker," Baby sister said, giving Deicide a push before walking away. Rodella stopped in front of him, holding a small purse just below her waist. "Don't you have any normal people clothes?" Rodella said. "I'm flattered that you believe me and normal people have anything in common," Deicide said. "You look nice, by the way." "Thanks. So what are we gonna do?" Rodella said. "You want some ice cream?" Deicide said. Rodella stopped walking. "I'm not in grade school," Rodella said. No, I just had lunch. Some dessert would be nice," Deicide said. "All right," Rodella said. They strolled leisurely through the more scenic decks in the commercial plaza, a mall that never stopped growing. Each section possessed a different theme. Presently they were on an ocean-themed deck. Underneath their feet and above their heads, sea creatures swam in an azure fluid that Deicide knew could not be pure water. Deicide had his hands in his pockets, gazing at the life that was swimming around him, secretly dreading what Rodella had to say. "The babies are so cute," Rodella said, "but they don't look much like Lady Knot." Deicide was surprised. He expected Rodella to be questioning her standing, now that members of his official bloodline had been named. Yes. So what is it?" Deicide said, stopping at a bench. The two sat, and Rodella waited for a person to pass before she spoke. Deicide tried to lean back to appear relaxed. He placed his arms across the top of the bench. "What'd you do to Fauna?" Rodella said. "I allowed her to leave," Deicide said. "Have you heard different?" "Plenty," Rodella said. "Baby sis says she's still in your estate." Deicide rolled his eyes. "When did you start listening to baby sis?" Rodella shrugged. "It's not that hard to believe," she said. "Have you stopped liking pretty girls?" "I would like to think those closest to me knew me better than that," Deicide said. "So you're saying it's never happened before?" Rodella said. "I've always required a willing participant," Deicide said. "Is this all you wanted to discuss?" "No," Rodella said. "Being a risk eater is not what I thought it'd be." "I told you it would be brutal," Deicide said. "That's not what I mean," Rodella said. "I know what the risk eaters really protect. I know where the people go. And I know you set it up so the inevitable will always happen." Their eyes met, and Deicide fought hard not to look away. "But I don't know why," Rodella said. Deicide clamped his jaws together, wanting to phrase his answer just right. He was sure that a lie would only cause her to withdraw from him completely. He reflected a moment on how much she looked like her mother, tiny nose and soft, full cheeks. It was a face that said, "I trust you." Deicide rose. "I have to show you something," Deicide said. Deicide said nothing as they made their way toward the center of the ship. Through the abyss he could feel that Rodella was growing increasingly uncomfortable with his silence and the increased security checkpoints. None of the men guarding the stations possessed name tapes. Their eyes were mustard yellow, seemingly dead to any stimulus. Even their passing registered no response. Yet, if any unauthorized personnel proceeded after the warnings they received, they would be hacked into a chunky paste. As they reached the final door at the end of this long passageway, Deicide motioned for Rodella to enter first. They both entered a space that seemed to stretch into eternity. Rows and rows of fluid-filled tanks. Each one was occupied by a rapidly growing humanoid creature. These were the husk that supplemented the size of Deicide's great array. Loaded with battle data and a careful assortment of memories, the creatures could be used to flood a planet, conquering massive areas within a few hours. Every few moments a creature would be ejected through a port in the bottom of the tank to be filled in a holding gel elsewhere in the facility. Rodella put her hand on the glass of one of the tanks and peered inside. "I've never seen a husk without a faceplate. They all look so sad," Rodella said. "How are they supposed to look?" Deicide said. "They bring misery to the world." "Creepy," Rodella said. They stepped on a moving walkway and slid along to the heart of this massive space. At its center, there were large machine arms dabbing each of the tanks, beginning their vestige intake cycle. Deicide very rarely visited this place. He always marveled at the efficiency and engineering of the husk chamber. They were carried further until they entered a separate chamber, much smaller than this one. The lighting changed from a bright sterile white to a hazy peach. The air in the lobby was filled with such a thick and sweet scent that many had trouble breathing at first. Deicide noticed that Rodella adjusted to the change easily. "Where are we?" Rodella said. "The Karnak are housed here," Deicide said, approaching the desk. Behind the reception desk was a nurse dressed in orange scrubs, a color that was not used on the medical decks. She smiled wide when she saw Deicide approach. "Lord Deicide," she said politely. "And this is?" "Sergeant Adarga Rodella. Echo Golf 56 Hotel 22 Victor 7 0937115528 Alpha," Deicide said. "Here we are. Just follow me. We have to get you two suited," she said. "You know my Eater ID number?" Rodella said. "Sure. Every person in my entourage," Deicide said. Rodella narrowed her eyes. "I don't even know my own by heart," she said. "How about some accountability, shipmate?" Deicide said. "Don't you shipmate me. Nobody knows their ID number," Rodella said. They were handed loose-fitting suits to keep their germs to themselves. With some slight annoyance, Deicide thrust his legs, umbilicals, and the abyss into the suit and activated the filtering system. They were led into the inner chamber of the facility, where the strange, heavy smell grew stronger. After a set of airlocks and a decon checkpoint, they entered an atrium with several passageways leading to apartments. Deicide headed down the center hall and pressed a pink button next to the door. A chime sounded, and then the door slid open a moment later. Before the pair was an apartment decorated in soft pastels, silk ruffles, and alien flora. Deicide put his arm around Rodella, even though some of the effect was lost because of the bulky suits. Deicide felt Rodella's body tense up when they turned the corner. In front of them was one of the Karnak surrogates, the breeders of Deicide's children, Her back was turned to them, exposing her large, useless wings. Hundreds of umbilical cables ran out of her back and into the organic cloth in the ceiling. Her peach-colored hair spilled over her shoulders, down to the backs of her knees. Deicide waited patiently, not wanting to upset the hive-minded creatures. Rodella continued to push against Deicide. If he were not in her way, she would have fled from the room.